Welcome to Brown Bag Bets, powered by BetsBirds. We are your daily dose of quick hit handicapping and sports betting picks. I'm Alex Christensen, and joining me, as always, from his wonderful living room. What kind of piano is that, Andy? Do you play yourself?
It's a baby grand, not full sized.
I like it. It's nice. As have you or the kids
in this economy. Otherwise, yeah, Monday, coming off super wild card weekend, had a lot of fun. I can't believe Drew and I got to all 6 halftimes. We didn't think that was going to happen. Obviously, if the Ravens were losing, it was going to be hard to start those from the get-go. Drew would have been in a haze. But yeah, we'll have more football content again probably later this week. Obviously, basketball all week, tennis all week, some golf probably touch on tomorrow. But I don't know. Let's do what we've been doing. Let's just start with the NBA. Hit me with the association. What'd you find for tonight?
For tonight, we have the Wizards of Washington. I'm going to use that name. I don't think we'll use the name we've been floating around in the chat. I don't think we're ready to blast that one around the world. But just pay attention to the news, folks. We'll see what happens to the Phoenix Suns after this game. But the Wizards are +7 here tonight. It's a tough rest spot for both teams, but it's kind of equal disadvantage here. They both had the night off last night, but this will be their third game in 4 nights. As you start to look at Phoenix, though, this is the third game of a road trip for them. It's the last game of a road trip, which can tend to be a pretty tricky spot for some of these teams. Now, Russell Westbrook is out, and I think that's part of the reason actually we're getting some value on this line. It looks like the market has moved this a couple points. I expected this to be closer to like 3 or 4, frankly. Well, maybe 4 or 5, but I think there's been some movement here for Russell Westbrook being out, and I'm fine with that. The Wizards play solid with him. That gets another shooter on the floor. They're spreading the ball out. They're not wasting possessions with him shooting long twos or trying goofy stuff on breakaways. Now, it is tough, this being the first game with Bradley out, their starting center, but Robin Lopez should be fine, and they have some guys behind him. So happy to grab Washington here again. I think we're getting some value given Phoenix's third game in the road. And again, with Russell Westbrook being out, I think this is a little bit of an overreaction. So let's grab the points with the Wizards here.
Dig it. I'm grabbing some points too with a bad team, a horrible team against another horrible team in a gorgeous Mid-Eastern Atlantic Conference matchup between the Florida A&M Rattlers and my South Carolina State Bulldogs. There's 14. I grabbed a 15, actually. There were some big numbers. These move so fast because it's an extra game. There's still some 14s out there. Again, going against I believe these two teams played yesterday. SC State almost won. I don't know if it'll be that close again, but this number is just too big. Both teams are very bad, but A&M is not 15 points better than anyone, I don't think. So I'm fine with this number, probably down to like 13 and a half. I think this is a 3-possession game, maybe at the most. Hopefully we don't see the old zigzag go against me here and they lose by 30, but I wish I'd played this yesterday, I guess. I got a little busy with football stuff, didn't play any basketball on Sunday, short slate, really short slate today. There's not a lot of games. There's not a lot of games worth watching, especially. So if you're going to bet something, bet something you can't watch, because good luck finding a stream for this one.
Yeah, it'll be tough. I'm sure you have to search around, but love it. Love these underdogs. Are you going to sprinkle the money line at all? You've been hitting some of these giant dogs. And I know you get that message every once in a while.
Yeah, I don't even know if they're going to offer money lines in some of these extra games like this with the 50. Maybe I'll have to take a look. Maybe I'll put a few bucks in that. So before we get to football, you have a little more ladies tennis for us.
Indeed. One more tennis play for us today. We're going to do a parlay. We're going to put together Timea Babos and Renata Zarazua, 2 women that are playing the Australian Open qualifying matches. So if you're up late tonight on the West Coast or even up late on the East Coast, this should start about 1 a.m. on the January 12th East time. So a little later in the night, West Coast. And we'll see. Again, some of these things get moved around, but it looks like it should be about 1 a.m. EST for both of these matches. And 2 really nice spots here where I think we have a lot of value on Zarazua. She is a player who doesn't quite have the name recognition I think she deserves. She generally takes care of lower quality competition and is playing someone well beneath her rank and someone that's not used to playing true WTA level talent. Timea Babos, very similar situation here. She hasn't played for a little while, but no one's really played. So I've been trying to figure out, frankly, why that line is a little bit low. I know that people have a lot of feelings about parlays, but in a sport like tennis, where you have some of these really deep money lines, you can have a little bit of value on them here. People like to bet the dogs at big prices, so it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world to take two things where I see a little bit of value in the price, put them together here. You should be looking right around plus 108. My guess is if you hunt around, you could do a little bit better there. But plus anything on these two women parlayed together should be a nice late night bet or wake in cash, I hope.
Yeah, I'll probably hit that. I got my Hubie Hurkitz. I need him to keep going. It's weird that Delray Beach is a 10-day tournament now, but such is life. Yeah, so I said bad slate in college basketball. Not a whole lot going for the NBA. I don't think there's not a ton of games. Tennis is starting.
Nothing sticks out.
Yeah, tennis is starting to towards the end of the men's tournament. The women's is still humming along, but we do have a football game tonight. Big football game. If you
one of the best football games of the year.
Yeah. If you like the Super Wild Card Weekend, you're gonna love the Natty. It's the Natty. Bama money's coming in. The total's still super high, but the biggest thing I like is the prop menus you get on big games like this. Obviously, we hit on that Friday big prop menu for the NFL. Same thing here. So we're gonna bring in a guest. Boom, Benjamin Brown. Look at that. I even put the thing right on top of his name. Look at that. I'm gonna
such a good job.
It still didn't work. Benjamin Brown, Pro Football Focus, better data guy, also Minnesotan. I don't know why that there's so many of us, but we'll bring him into the stream.
It's so cold up there. You have to bet on sports. Nothing else really going on.
Exactly. How you doing, Benjamin?
Just Ben. I'm doing well.
Let's not do formalities. Let's just call him Ben.
Yeah.
Ben Brown.
I definitely prefer Ben, so I do appreciate that. I'm excited to be on here. Brown Bags are definitely in quite a bit. My only question is I kind of need to get one of these Bet Spurts sweatshirts that I've seen on here quite a bit. I don't know if I link up with Win Bet or how exactly I can do that, but those look pretty, I think. And my size, I think I can fit in Andy's size at that point. So
you just got to get in the car. Do to drive to Illinois, right, Andy?
Go to Colorado. Yeah, we're gonna have to
go
trip out to Colorado to sign up. But I talked about this a couple of times last week with you get to the Super Bowl. There's like 10,000 bets you can place now if you have enough outs. There's a ton, just wild card weekend compared to normal NFL, but the Natty, there's so many. I talked to you a little in the DMs about some I remember. Like I had a Bo Scarborough under, and then he got injured, and it was not cheering for injuries, but it's nice to win. And then I said OJ Mayo when I was typing it out. That's a basketball player. OJ Howard, he caught a long pass in that game. Like you do remember these props that you hit, which is weird because this is like 4 years ago, it feels like. But have you taken I mean, this is hypothetical, this is rhetorical. Have you taken a look at all the prop offerings for the game tonight?
I have. I'm excited for it. This is nice because we usually get, two props, like you said, a little bit bigger of a game. So we're definitely getting a lot of markets. I do think that, if you think the prop market for the NFL is efficient, it's even worse for college football. So I do think this is definitely a money-making opportunity for where, kind of willing to go through, maybe lean towards some unders here. And of course, high total games, 75 and a half, even in certain spots. But I kind of like some of these unders here, a few that I've played already. I kind of lean towards Garrett Wilson getting a little bit more targets than Chris Olave for that Ohio State Buckeyes receiving unit. So I am kind of on Chris Olave under 100.5 receiving yards. I think he's probably going to be just a little bit less involved. I do think the Alabama are quite good. We see both, Josh Jobe and Patrick Surtain. They kind of stick to their sides. Basically, Jobe is basically on the right side. 80+% of his snaps sitting on the left side. Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, they do kind of on the formation quite a bit, but I do think that Chris Olave is probably going to see more Patrick Surtain. So I think that Garrett Wilson's probably the guy that I'm leaning towards if you're going to play, like DFS showdown slates and stuff like that. Probably prefer him over Olave, who's going to have a little bit more of that name recognition here from the Ohio State side. And I do kind of like Ohio State keeping it potentially within the 9 points. So I do think that if they so I kind of lean 103, but that I definitely think are in play. But I don't know what. Are there anything that's kind of are looking for?
No, I mean you kind of hit on the the thing is too, when in games like this where you have all these big names and everybody, like there's going to be a premium on some of these overs. Like there's always a premium on the big name over. Olave being, the big name for Ohio State. Sometimes you can find some value, not only just like fading it and taking under, but somebody else is over. I don't know what to do with just so many in a total in the 70s, and when you have all these skill position players for Alabama. Like, I'm not 100% sure what you do with that. If there is some value at just like, who they match up with across the field from a defensive standpoint, and the fact that they, there's only one football. You got to spread it around a little, and it's tough to say who's going to get all the targets or who gets the target share generally, or who gets the target share versus this type of defense.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it is interesting too, because we also have, an added element, basically Jaden Waddle's looking like he's going to be a game decision. I think the fact that they've kind of struggled along this far means that he's probably, if he plays, I do think that he's probably going to get a full complement of his routes run, basically. So I do think a guy like John in that second receiver role for Alabama, I'm seeing for him posted. I'm props for Jaden. I do think hitting, John Mechie's under 4.5 receptions, under 63 receiving yards, I do think are both viable as well, with the expectation that Jaden was probably going to get a full amount of run here. And he is, first round NFL draft prospect who is just, a stud. John Mechie at this point in time. So, and the Heisman Trophy winning Devonta Smith involved as well. He's going to get a number of targets, and he's kind of that guy, that name recognition. 8.5 receptions. It's like the projections that I'm running are basically right in line at this point. I think I have his projections for receiving yards at 140.5, mark at 143. So I don't really find too much value with that, but he's not really a guy that I'm too inclined to fade. I do think that, if you're playing some of these unders and high total games like you talked about, you have to find the situations that maybe are in flux. And I do think like Chi is kind of the situation on Monday night. So that's probably one of my favorite bets to make on the prop market for sure from the Alabama side of things.
And I mean, you mentioned the price here. We got like a 7.5 on open. I seen people with 10s, but I mean, it's 10s they're paying too much money for. I mean, people paid like -130 for a 10, which I'm not sure if it's really worth it in a game that's lined at 75 to. And also I've run some numbers on college margins of victory. It's crazy. Like the key numbers are completely different in college. It seems like, especially when you get to some of the secondary key numbers. So, I mean, is some of this stuff just the Waddle stuff or the Bama money, or, I mean, is there something to, have you heard anything? I've heard some COVID rumors again, a team out of Ohio with some COVID rumors.
Yeah. I mean, I did hear like kind of towards the end of last week a little bit. It sounded like maybe a discussion of the game even getting pushed back. I think it was last Tuesday or Wednesday. I haven't heard anything additional from, so I'm not really the COVID situation too much. Really didn't come into effect, in their prior game. Again, I'm not factoring that in. I just think, I don't know. I think the totals obviously inflate a little bit. Our green line model at PFF does like the over if we had to have a direction. Basically, we don't really value on the number at 75. That does definitely influence how I play the prop market. But like, for example, like the matchup situations, I do think Alabama better defensive than what we've seen from Ohio State. They've definitely shown that ability to probably slow down teams. We have them basically as, the 9th best coverage unit in college football. We have Ohio State at 35. So I do think that, guys on Wade from Ohio State are definitely going to struggle if he is going to be, that shadow coverage situation from Devonta Smith. So I do think Devonta Smith, Jones is probably going to get it done. But like you said, his like passing yardage number really inflated at this point in time. These are just some like really any markets, like you said, kind of towards over. Makes it really tough. You definitely have to choose your spots if you're only going to look towards betting overs, but there are a number of opportunities on the unders in the player prop market from what I'm seeing based on my projections.
Do you see any value in unders in terms of, you said for the total game, you guys kind of lean towards the over. I always like looking at like first quarter unders here and first half unders in some of these big games. And I haven't had a chance yet to go back and look at previous national championship games, but do you think there's a chance this game starts low? I'm looking at a first quarter total. I'm seeing under 16.5 even, which means there might be a 17 floating around somewhere. And then the first half is 38. So do you think maybe this game starts a little bit slow and there might be some value in things like that?
Actually, I kind of the game maybe starting a little down more towards the like an old, derivative towards like a first half team total, kind of below that 17-point key number. Kind of, I like that. Well, I think, and if I was playing based on stream, that would probably in most scenarios have played out. I definitely think I'd probably be leaning toward the second half, especially if there is kind of like a wide margin with Alabama up ahead. They have shown the propensity to completely slow down in the second half, and they've kind of been ahead and in control. It's kind of how Nick Saban has been, for quite some. I do think if you're looking towards a derivative total market, towards the overs in the first half, under in the second half would just be my general guideline and how I'm probably going to approach this game.
I did talk to somebody a little bit. Yeah, you cut out a little there, but I think you were leaning towards more of a fast start, and that's kind of where I'm at. Again, I don't follow college as close, but I did talk to somebody about that as far as, this is something I've mentioned in the NFL before. There's certain teams, certain situations that lean towards live overs, live unders, or live betting on a team, even if they're out to a lead. And, certain teams play differently with a lead, and it's just like that's a Saban thing. Like you can end up with a big lead second half Saban, slow game. Like these things happen in these Alabama games where if it does turn out to be just Ohio State can't hang, you might not get to the number. Where there might be some live betting opportunities with that as well.
I mean, we've seen it game, but we were on pretty heavily, and I think basically jumped out to like a 35-7 lead, and then touchdown in the second half, and the over game total ended up just from that fact. So we definitely Saban, even in some of these games, I think he's just gonna probably take the foot off the gas a little bit quicker, aggressive, because I do think that his team is probably the far in this match, kind of the direction that the betting market has sided with at. So that's kind of my expectation for the game. Kind of probably plays out in the second half.
Sure, and then also the biggest thing too here is if you have a whole bunch of outs. This is something I've been thinking about today, as I looked at some of the prices for NFL stuff over the weekend. Especially, somebody just pointed this out. I made a joke about like there was a grand salami for the NFL where you could get the grand salami for all the points scored in all 6 games. And I just posted it, and, people were giving me a hard time because it was like a $50 limit bet, just on a bad offshore. And, and then somebody, I think it was a Barstool book, the Barstool book posted, they had a grand salami too. And there was like a 12-point difference. And so, somebody just DM'd me. He's like, "Are we going to try to middle the grand salami?" And well, I'd have to drive to Pennsylvania first off, or have Alex place it for me. But
no, we never do that, especially not on air.
Yeah, it's not just not just in that, but in a lot of these markets, you're seeing some of this. Somebody pointed out the rushing yards for Fields, and one book had 39, one had 49. Like, is there any value? I don't want to say like it's not a true arbitrage if you're paying vig on either side, but is there any value to trying to middle some of these if you're seeing it, like how big of a middle? And I guess it's there's not going to be some blanket answer for that. Like 10 yards, it has to be 10 yards because
right.
10 yards is relative to the distribution of results, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. But the thing is, like when we see these, this distribution for how that game's actually going to land is probably the middle, right? Like that's the outcome. Looking at from the fact that these are efficient markets, or at least somewhat efficiently priced, right? Then we should probably have an understanding that we're probably going to gravitate at least close to her. So if you're getting a decently wide, window to actually middle with. I definitely think that there is some value with it, but I would be looking for it more, and it's probably not going to happen as much, but more in like the discrete number props. So things like, interception, touchdowns, receptions, where you kind of have that lower number where, like that half point or full point movement is a lot more significant than what you would see in like a yardage number market, basically. So that's kind of what I would be looking at. But yeah, I definitely think middling, hedging, and other sorts of things are definitely like things that people are going to want to and need to add to kind of their betting arsenal, or whatever you want to call it, sort of something that I've talked with, like, Eric Eager, who you guys have definitely chatted with before, is, been on the PFF forecast things, is trying to kind of use teasers as a way to potentially middle it. So if we like State here tonight, earlier in the week they were at, Alabama was 8.5. Maybe you could tease Alabama down to 1.5, come back over the top here, as we get closer to kickoff and get, Ohio State at +9. You have a pretty decent window where you could get on, Alabama wins by 3 or 7. You're basically going to win both bets and just have a second leg of that teaser open, or already closed if you guys locked it in with your Buccaneers bet over the weekend. I know you guys left one of those open, I think, over the weekend or something like that. That was going to be my recommendation. Alabama at 8.5 is to tease them down to 2.5. I think was one of my favorite plays, but we got a little bit too late of line movement there. So
yeah, and it's funny because I talked about middling and saying how many yards you would need. And it is funny because it does make sense. It's a little counterintuitive at first to say we should do it with something small, like touchdowns between 2.5 and 3 when it moves, compared to something that can have, a 13-yard middle. Whereas a 13-yard middle is nothing. That's like one broken tackle and your middle's gone. Whereas, the touchdown prop or interception props, like those are, much more rare occurrences that you need something big to happen in the game to actually, change the result on one of those bets.
Yeah. And those have kind of been like the markets I've been mainly focusing on as we get later in the year a little bit. I do think that books seem to have a little bit of difficulties pricing out, like the half number movement basically, and then actually having it correct as far as like what the price should be. So I think those are more of the markets, even like with our PF props, the markets that we gravitate towards a little bit more. So I definitely think there's probably some, as far as like a recent topic be approached here in the off season, kind of for why those prices seem to be just a little bit more inefficient. I think is definitely an opportunity for people to kind of do for sure.
Yeah, I might open up some Bama teasers, to tell you the truth. Just see which football teams I want to put them with.
Yeah, and to layer on top of your point about props, this is a great opportunity to check as many books as you can. One of the things I'll do later is go open up every book and just try to compare everything. Like you said, as you start to look around, I think you'll see a lot of opportunities to get a little arbitrage and stuff in there. And it's nice to have a little guaranteed profit, or at least some no-lose situations as you go into the game.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. I mean, no risk situations where you can still have, twice the payout, I definitely think is like a really good way of building, a bankroll with not too much risk involved. So I think anytime you can take those shots, for the most part, probably going to be a pretty beneficial play, in my opinion.
And then what about some? And it sucks because this is the last question for the Natty, I guess. Like Najee Harris is like minus 1,000 to score a touchdown. Devonta is like minus 1,200. If those are two-way markets, isn't there a tail risk that they twist an ankle early? Right. Again, Bama might be, but Najee or Devonta could get hurt, and Bama could still win by 10. Like they have enough skill position players to win. Like, isn't there enough tail risk to be looking at and actually taking the no on some of these? I mean, Najee Harris was like at FanDuel last weekend, or when they played their first game against Notre Dame, he was minus 2,000 to score a touchdown. He didn't. I mean, you could have laid 2,000 to win 100 and just lost your money. He did not score a touchdown. It's not guaranteed. So is there any, you should, it's always price dependent, but some of those no's against some of these huge chalks feel like something I might want to get involved with.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think, you kind of touched on it really early on in our, but like, obviously people you don't want to cheer for injuries or anything like that. I do think there's an added element of risk that isn't completely understood by the market. Because like you said, we see a lot of these player props kind of shaded towards the over, just from a perspective of there's like injury sport like football. It probably should be leaning the other way. really not. So I think that even creates just a little bit more opportunity. But yeah, like just to speak to like Najee Harris, we do see Brian Robinson get a decent amount of the goal line work. Najee had some big runs, gets involved in the passing game and stuff like that. But I do think Brian Robinson kind of gets, especially, in a game that might not be as close as we expect, we could see Brian Robinson kind of take over that goal line work, and maybe Najee Harris has a big game between the 12, doesn't got that big run and, play game, but doesn't necessarily get into the end zone. I definitely think that's a decent market for sure.
Cool. All right. Well, hey, thanks a lot for joining us on this, and looking forward to that. And people can find you. I put the Twitter up. It's at PFF_Ben Brown for all the stuff you do. And you do the what's the podcast? I can't think of the name. I literally joined you on it one time.
Yep. Yeah, you were on it a few weeks ago. We do the PFF Daily Betting Podcast. We were doing it every day. We kind of switched to like a more like 3 or 4 day rotation, just with things kind of slowing down. I mean, we're kind of putting the off-season plan in place here, but definitely be a good spot to check out for some like NFL draft props and some other things. And I'm sure we'll talk about, some more evergreen content here in the off-season when we get the opportunity for sure. So sure. PFF Daily Betting Podcast, check it out.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Cool.
Guys.
And then one more time, what was the under on the Ohio State receiver that I wanted? Was it just Olave's unders?
Olave's unders 100.3. I kind of like Garrett Wilson's overs. So 5.5 receptions. I think it's like, what is it? 6. I should double check here. 64.5 receiving yards. 76.5 receiving yards for Garrett Wilson. I do like John Mechie's under 3.5. Receiving yards for Alabama and under 4.5 receptions, especially if Jalen Waddle's actually able to play here. Those are probably my favorite spots, but I'm fading Najee Harris as well. I actually have, going back to your point on total touchdowns, I actually have him at under 1.5 plus 1/3, him to score 2 minus money. So I definitely think him going under 1.5 is a pretty decent bet as well. And maybe he, doesn't even get in time as well. So we'll see what actually happens there.
I got to find that. I love that.
Yeah, I like that a lot. So, all right. Well, thanks a lot for joining us. Real quick recap. Washington +7 for Alex. I took the Bulldogs of South Carolina State, a little bit of a tennis parlay, and a whole bunch of football takes there. So looking forward to the Natty. Thanks again for joining us, Ben. And yeah, we'll join you tomorrow. We're going to talk some golf because there's every weekend we have a golf tournament. Hey.
I think we're still on.
I think we are.